Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to one of the most spectacular games that have been played so far in the Tata Steel Masters in 2024. We have here Alireza FIrouzja against Parham Maghsoodloo in a wild dynamic RIO GAMBIT accepted of the Berlin defense of the Lopez. So in my opinion, very spectacular, crazy game. Put your seatbelts on and pay good attention how Alireza is playing this wild opening. So with the white pieces, Alireza opened with move e4. We have e5 by Parham, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5. The Lopez, the Spanish game, is on the board. We have knight to f6, the Berlin defense, kingside casting, leaving the e4 pawn unprotected, and now we have the RIO Gambit accepted with the knight takes e4. Of course, this is just only a temporary advantage for black. Black took the pawn, but of course white has this dynamic opportunities to attack the center with rook to e1. The king is stuck in the center, so that's why black has to be careful. Knight to d6, we have knight to e5. The e file is now liberated, so that's why here Parham had to play bishop to e7 and lock the e file. We have bishop to f1, retreating with the bishop, keeping the light bishop on the board. We have now knight to e5, rook to e5. Still the king is in danger, so that's why Parham finally castled and secured the king. Here Alireza advances the pawn, d4, bishop to f6, hitting the rook, rook to e1, retreating, and now after rook to e8, now the all fun already starts. Here bishop to f4, played by Alireza FIrouzja. Here he basically is leaving the pawn on d4 unprotected. Here Parham took rook to e1, queen to e1, but here already I think bishop to d4 is a playable line, has been played many times, but it's quite risky because of this sequence. Bishop to d6, hitting here simply the knight, c takes d6, c3, kicking away the bishop, and after bishop to f6, black is left now with these two weaknesses, the weak d6 pawn, also the d7 pawn is up a pawn, but I think in the next couple moves white will play something queen to d2, knight to a3, rook to d1, keeping the pressure on the d file. Bishop will come on a natural square, so the development that white will get here I think is perfectly fine, and black has still also trouble where to go with the light square bishop. When you play bishop to b7, then the d7 is weak, so playable. The engine gives here even equal chances for both sides, but it's a risky line I think that black should try to avoid. So that's why after queen to e1, Parham retreated with the knight here with the move knight to e8. Notice that all of the minor pieces and the queen are stuck here on the starting squares and also on the back rank, so black is lacking in development here, and now Alireza plays a beautiful dynamic line with this move knight to c3. This is now the most progressive idea that you can play in this position. You can of course play a solid c3, you can of course play bishop to e3, I don't know, queen to e3, everything is perfectly fine, but a dynamic player like Alireza plays the most aggressive line with knight to c3, and now the fun starts. Look at this crazy opening. So here we have bishop to d4, Alireza sacrificed the pawn. Now knight to d5, getting use here of the square, attacking c7 and also attacking the weakness on e7. The problem here for black is I think that black cannot take the pawn on b2 immediately. This is risky because I think it's almost losing on spot here for black, because rook to b1 is going to happen, and basically you have two choices. You can go to f6 again, or maybe to a3. If you go to f6, then queen to e4 is very dangerous. The cool idea about this move queen to e4 is to get the bishop on d3 and putting more pressure against the pawn on h7. For instance, you try something like c6, then we have this one, rook to e1, attacking simply the e file. You get the king here on f8, then we get this one, queen to h7, and you cannot of course take out here the piece on d5 because you get checkmated. So let's go back. This is the potential line, but I think we should always study a little bit theory here, because I think you would reach similar or maybe even the same positions. Now after queen to e4, of course black could go with the move d6, but now comes this tricky idea, bishop to d3. Now you cover with the g6, and now the stunning idea is here, this one, queen to e8, queen takes e8, knight to f6, king to f8, and now after bishop to h6 we have king to e7. Now we grab simply the queen, and white is continuing the game with an extra piece. So okay, black has some compensation in pawns. has only 2 pawns for the minor piece, but I think the bishop pair is simply too powerful here, so it's losing here for black. So let's go back after move bishop to b2. As I said, this was the potential line. Parham did not take, but now after rook to b1, what you could try is of course bishop to a3, keeping the bishop active here, maybe also protecting the e7 weakness. Now with queen to e3, you retreat maybe. Queen to e3 hits of course the bishop on a3, and now rook to e1, simply hitting the knight. Wherever the knight goes, it's a little bit messy, because if you play knight to f6 here, then we have this one, knight to c7 hitting the pawn, and this is again a messed up game. Even if you go here to d6, then bishop to d3, you have to develop your light square bishop. Now bishop to g5, you play something like f6. Look at this, queen to h3. This one is weak, so I think this position is collapsing in the next couple of moves. So simply too many light square weaknesses here. The knight is stuck here. Again, I think not a good position anymore here for black. So that's why here from knight to d5, Parham did not take, played the move, the correct move, d6, and the engine gives here still equal chances for both sides. Black has of course an extra pawn, but white has a beautiful compensation in piece activity. So after move d6, we have bishop to g5, hitting the queen of course. If you take, then of course queen to e8 leads into immediate checkmate here against black. So that's why f6 by Parham. Notice that this move f6, okay, it's kicking away the bishop, but keeps here again many light square problems in black's camp. We have bishop to h4, Alireza stays on this diagonal, still hits the queen. We have bishop takes b2 now by Parham, and now again this idea rook to b1. Rook to b1 is of course hitting the bishop, but also in some lines hits the pawn on b7. But I think in this dynamic attack that Alireza performed here, it's not so important to take out now pawns. I think to attack the king is more important. So I'm not sure if even in any of these lines Alireza would go for the pawn. The most important thing here is to exploit the light square weaknesses. So we have here bishop to e5 by Parham. We have f4. Alireza keeps the attacking flow, keeps the pressure against this bishop, and now Parham didn't react correctly. Now he makes his first mistake in the game and plays now the move bishop to e6. This move is a problem because you cannot really have this bishop on this diagonal through the whole game. The bishop is also lined up here against the queen. The best idea here is actually to kick away the knight from this active square. You see how important this knight will be now in the attack in the next couple of moves, because after f takes e5 you can take, and now after something like e takes f6, knight to f6, this would be, at least the engine says, this is a playable position for black. Black has some extra material. White has of course a beautiful compensation in the bishop pair, can of course attack the d5 weakness, d6 weakness. So a dynamic game it would be for sure. But when I watch now the database, it has been played many times. Many drawish games have been played by black, many winning games also by black. So this was the way to go now for Parham Maghsoodloo. But now after move f4, as we said, bishop to e6, mistake that you see how Alireza will punish now. Alireza is playing now very perfect attack. First of all, bishop to c4. As I said, you don't go for this pawn on b7. This simply slows down your progress. Bishop to c4 is much more aggressive. So we have bishop to d4. The bishop has to retreat. We have king to h1. The bishop is hanging. You have to play bishop to f7, and now queen to e4. Look how Alireza is getting actively again with the queen into the game. You cannot of course play bishop to g6 because of queen to d4, or even in some lines here knight to e7 is a possibility. King to h8, queen to e8, queen to e6 with queen to g8 ideas are of course devastating here for black. So as I said, you cannot attack the queen, you cannot kick away the queen from this beautiful square on e4. We have bishop to c5. Parham loses, I think, what is in this game now a decisive attack, a decisive tempo. So now Alireza has extra time to play this beautiful move knight to e7. Here Parham went to f8, and now queen to h7. This was, I think, the move of this particular game. This was, I think, the move that even surprised Parham here. Here, Parham got stunned by this beautiful attacking idea here by Alireza FIrouzja. And what should you do? there are many chances. Let's see the worst options. If you play here queen to e7, then of course queen to h8 leads into a checkmate. You have to cover. Then queen to g8 is checkmate. If you pick up here the knight with the king, then the rook is coming actively into the game. So as I said, notice that rook takes b7 was never an option. It simply doesn't do anything, takes a pawn, but the rook is not on the optimal file. So here for rook to e1, we have king to d7 as a possible line, and then bishop to f7 is, I think, devastating here to handle. The knight is hanging. You don't have good scores for the knight. You will lose eventually the knight. So messed up game here for black. What you could do, instead of taking the knight, you could play the move d5 here. Then after knight to d5, bishop to d5, this is now the line that gets the piece back. You have to play king to f7 and queen to h5, and now we pick up the bishop here with an extra tempo, with an attack against the king. You have to step back, and now after queen to f3, I think this is a perfect position for white. The position is opened. We have the bishop here on the board. Black's king is endangered. Many weaknesses again here on light squares, pawn weaknesses. So this is, as I said, the perfect situation for the bishop pairs for sure. So after queen to h7, the Parham took the bishop on c4. So you see the knight was hanging, bishop was hanging, but now comes the stunner of this continuation. Rook to e1 supports simply the knight on e7. Is of course threatening again queen to h8 because you cannot cover. And the problem also here for black is that black doesn't have good squares for the light square bishop, doesn't have any good squares to escape, because you see how important it was to keep also the bishop here, because this potential bishop will be loose on the board, and then Alireza FIrouzja will attack it in the next couple moves. So we have here queen to e7. Parham gives back material, gives up the queen for rook and the knight, but has also taken so far a minor piece. When we watch now about pure material, when we watch now, okay, Parham took the rook and two minor pieces for the queen. Actually, it would be a decent compensation, but Alireza calculated, as I said, this in a perfect way. Great calculations here by Alireza. Queen to e4, hitting the bishop on c4. You see, everything was such a pure calculation here by Alireza. Great move, because after bishop to e6, now he has this one, f5, and from this point on, I think the game becomes simply a one-way ticket in white's favor. Rook to d8, g4, we have c6. Alireza makes further progress. He's saying, I will take my bishop, but at least I'll improve also the position here on the king side. We have king to f8, Alireza took, king to e7, takes, and now queen to g4, trying, of course, to sneak in with the queen here on f7 and not allowing also the move knight to g7. We have d5, Alireza goes for this idea, bishop to g3, very important move, taking the square for the king to escape. That's why bishop to e5, bishop takes, f takes e5, and now Alireza plays the brilliant idea, go simply into an endgame. Okay, black is also a passer, but I think this passer can be always taken by the king. The king is close enough, and now the main progressive plan is just to push the pawn, and obviously this is now completely winning endgame here for white. So e4, Alireza pushes the pawn further, plays now this one, e7, kicking with the rook, plays a check, and now takes this pawn, says, okay, I have enough compensation, the pieces are far away from the action. Queen to e4 comes with a check, king to e7, Alireza took another pawn, pushed simply the pawn further, and in this particular position, Parham Maghsoodloo resigns. There's simply no way that you stop this pawn. You can play knight to f7 later. You have to play first king to c7, getting out of this mess, but the pieces are misplaced, so I think it was a fair decision here to resign. So great game, great RIO Gambit accepted that we have seen in the bird and defense. In my opinion, crazy game, crazy calculations by Alireza, especially when he went back to e4 to trap the bishop on c4 and then f5. He calculated this 6-7 moves in the perfect way. So in my opinion, this was simply one of the best chess games for sure in the Tata Steel Masters in 2024. So okay, with this video I wanted to also thank you for subscribing to my channel. I have now 30,000 subscribers. subscribers, which is really a crazy number for me. Of course, I'm maybe not the most popular YouTube chess channel, but it means really a lot to me. 30,000 people are at least watching sometimes my YouTube chess channel, so thank you very much for doing. Of course, I will continue to make content here on my YouTube chess channel, especially covering tournaments, maybe some chess theory, and of course our beautiful computer chess game. So okay, see you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.